Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Jackson Miller, and I am the delegate for the 50th House District of the Virginia House of Delegates. I've lived my entire life in the Commonwealth of Virginia. I was educated in the Fairfax County Public Schools and went on to Virginia Commonwealth University, where I earned a Bachelor's of Science degree in urban planning. It was at VCU where I started my career in public service. I was awarded an ROTC scholarship, which gave me the opportunity to serve our nation as an officer in the U.S. Army Reserves. I then was employed by the Arlington County Police Department, where I spent about 7 years protecting the citizens of Arlington County. Then about 8 years ago, I transferred over to the Prince William County Police Department, where since I've been protecting the citizens of this community. I've also been blessed in the private sector as a businessman. I've had a successful career as a realtor and a real estate investor, and my understanding of business and our economy has led to many endorsements and support that I'm very proud to accept. I happen to know that Ms. Rishell also sought the endorsement from these groups. These are mainstream groups. They include the Virginia Farm Bureau, the Automobile Dealers Association, the Virginia Hospital Association, the Fairfax County Chamber of Commerce, the Virginia Healthcare Association, the Virginia Dental Association, among others. These groups don't support people, as Ms. Rishell describes me, as an extremist. They support candidates that will be good for Virginia's economy. They support people and candidates that will be good for Virginia's infrastructure. Ladies and gentlemen, politics are so often all about the negatives. Let's look at some of the things that we've been blessed about here in Virginia. We have a beautiful state with natural resources, from the Blue Ridge Mountains to the Chesapeake Bay. We have an incredibly strong economy, a low unemployment rate. Both CNBC and Forbes magazine have rated us the best state in the country to do business in. And with education, we've got a great public education system. Education Weekly named Virginia the best place for a child to succeed in our nation. And a recent NEA study gave the Commonwealth of Virginia a ranking of 3rd with a student-to-teacher ratio. That's a good thing. We have a lot to be blessed, we have a lot to be thankful for. Yet with all of these blessings, we can't rest on our laurels. We must find ways to improve our transportation system. We must find ways to deal with residential overcrowding. We must, as a state government, work with both the federal and local governments to deal with the problems that we get from illegal immigration. Ladies and gentlemen, put controversial issue or partisan politics aside. Simply look at the resume of the two candidates here tonight. I am by far more experienced to do the job that we are both seeking. I am the delegate that can and will work to solve these issues. I've been honored to have been elected to represent you once before in the House of Delegates. I would be honored to continue that service, and I respectfully ask for your vote in November. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we'll have the opening statement from Jeanette Rishell.
I want to thank the Committee of 100 for hosting this event and providing this opportunity for all candidates. Thanks to our moderator, Keith Scarborough, and thanks to all of you in attendance. All of us in Northern Virginia are fortunate to live in an area that offers prosperity and a good quality of life. My husband Ed and I raised our 2 daughters here, educated them in quality public schools, and then watched them start families of their own. I'm running for House of Delegates because I want to ensure that the opportunities for a good life are available for our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren, everybody's. Rapid population growth has led to gridlock on the roads, strains on our public services, loss of open space, and even an increasing number of illegal immigrants who are taking advantage of job opportunities offered by employers who want to hire at the lowest possible wage rather than to obey the law. We need the realistic and common sense leadership like that provided by the late Harry Parrish and our current delegate, our current Senator Chuck Colgan, who together provided public service of the highest quality. Unfortunately, we don't have enough of this type of leadership in the House of Delegates today. As a result, the recent transportation bill passes the tough decisions on raising revenues onto the local governments and imposes poorly thought out abusive driver fees, which do not even apply to out-of-state drivers. This initiative fails as both a public safety and a revenue-raising measure. There's also been a lot of talk about illegal immigration without any real accomplishment. I don't go in for dramatic rhetoric. I want to solve problems. I want to hold employers accountable with heavy fines when they knowingly hire illegal immigrants. I want to repeal the bad driving fees that my opponent voted for twice. I want to support education by reducing class sizes and ensuring that teachers' pay remains competitive. I will support public safety by providing first responders with both the tools they need to do their jobs and a good quality of life for the first responder. I will promote policies that link land use with transportation so that we can curb out-of-control development and focus on smart growth. We're at a crossroads in Virginia today. We cannot allow politics as usual to continue in the House of Delegates. As I've gone door to door, I've listened to you say that you're tired of business as usual. This election provides an opportunity for change. We can send a message to Richmond that it's time to stop the talk and get to work. My approach understands that maintaining a good quality of life in Northern Virginia requires us to deal with all, not just some, of our problems.
Thank you. The first question goes to Ms. Rishell, and a 2-minute response. How do you feel illegal immigrants affect our schools and health care? And what specifically would you do to combat illegal immigration in Manassas, Manassas Park, and Prince William County?
Well, there is no doubt that we have an illegal immigration problem. President Bush and his administration have made a horrible mess of this illegal immigration. And it's fallen to the localities, it's fallen to the states to take leadership here. And this is what we need to do. We need to hold employers accountable with stiff, heavy fines. If they don't pay attention, then take their business license away. Because right now we are in a revolving door of illegal immigration. And we need to remove the incentive, and the incentive is the jobs. And we need to enforce the existing laws that we have. My opponent had a lot of laws that went nowhere. We need to enforce the laws we have. You know, for 12 years, English has been the official language of the Commonwealth. You know, passing new laws is not going to make any difference. And we need funding to back ourselves up with the laws that we do have. So I think we need to do those things. We need to hold employers accountable or take away their business license if they don't pay attention. And you know, this is an issue where there's been a lot of rhetoric, a lot of polarization of dialogue. And all I can say is this issue is not a partisan issue. This is not about who can yell the loudest. This is not about who's going to make people the angriest. This is about who's going to go to Richmond and do serious problem solving.
2 minutes. Mr. Miller, would you like me to repeat the question?
Yes, please.
Okay. How do you feel illegal immigrants affect our schools and health care, and what specifically would you do to combat illegal immigration in Manassas, Manassas Park, and Prince William County?
Well, illegal immigration greatly affects both our health care and our school systems. The city of Manassas has the second highest rate of English as a second language students in the Commonwealth of Virginia. The city of Manassas Park has the third highest. We also know that our Prince William hospital systems, both Potomac and here in the city of Manassas, so Prince William Hospital, are heavily burdened by indigent care patients who in many cases are illegal aliens coming in for routine medical inspections. I submitted several bills and actually feel quite proud of my accomplishments in the House of Delegates this year. You know, Ms. Rishell says that none of my bills became law. I would say that many of my bills made it out of the House of Delegates, including, I'm sorry?
I didn't say that.
Okay, on immigration. So many of my bills did get out of the House of Delegates, including some controversial ones, and I'm very proud of that. But I tell people it takes many years to get new issues through Richmond. It takes many years. A perfect example is Delegate McQuigg and her red light bills. Look how many years it took her to finally get the red light bill passed through the House of Delegates and the state Senate. It takes time. The only answer I hear from my opponent on this issue is to heavily fine employers. She says nothing about going after the illegal aliens themselves. It's a perfect example of my opponent's animosity towards the private sector, quite frankly. Federal preemption specifically does not allow state or local governments to fine or put criminal charges on businesses that hire illegals. What they may allow is for states or localities to revoke the business license, and I did submit such a bill. My House Bill 2930 in Richmond this year would allow localities in the state to revoke a business license from any business that knowingly hires an illegal.
And 1 minute response, Ms. Rishell.
I am entirely willing to hold, when there's two parties to the same illegality, I am most assuredly willing to hold both parties accountable. And I didn't say none. What I said was you had a lot of bills that went nowhere. Also regarding holding businesses accountable, the businesses who do play by the rules, the ones who hire legally, they're at a disadvantage. And by holding businesses accountable and removing the incentive, I just thought of a good example. The reason that this is important to remove the incentive. You know this gentleman who, no, he's not a gentleman, this man who was deported twice, and then he came back and he murdered his friend, he strangled him. You know, by all appearances, people can come and go at will across our border. So much more important that we take away the incentive that brings them here, and that's the jobs.
1 minute response.
Jeanette, I'm glad you brought up that crime, because that man that was murdered was someone who I knew. That man who was murdered sat near me in church almost every Sunday. That is why this issue is so important to me. That is why we must address this issue and tackle it aggressively. Ladies and gentlemen, last year we were the polar opposites on this issue, Ms. Rishell and I. Now hopefully she has found the right light. Maybe she wants to get tough on illegal immigration all of a sudden. But ladies and gentlemen, our debates last year, she was opposed to ICE training for our local police. She was opposed to stopping in-state tuition for illegal aliens. On May 11th of this year, she was quoted in the Gainesville Times as calling me an extremist and showing poor judgment for a bill that got 70 votes in the House of Delegates, including the minority leader, Ward Armstrong. I wonder if my opponent asked him if he was an extremist when he hosted a fundraiser for her this spring. Ladies and gentlemen, I am not an extremist for proposing a bill that would stop our taxpayer dollars from going through private organizations to adult illegal aliens. I am serious about this issue, and it is something I want to focus on again in Richmond. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Delegate Miller, the next question goes to you. First, many voters are angry at the transportation bill passed this year. How do you feel about the abuser fees and the regional taxes? Would you vote to repeal them? If so, how would you fund new transportation projects?
Well, like Senator Colgan, I did vote for this bill. I voted for this bill because it brought money to Northern Virginia that was desperately needed for transportation. I voted for this bill because it had several very good features in it. Some of the things that were talked about quite frequently in the first debate. It provided tools for localities to actually start controlling rapid development even better, urban counties. It provided for what I campaigned on last year, that we use our bonding, so our ability to use our AAA bond rating to go towards transportation. It also did what I campaigned on last year, provided the initial bill, half of all future budget surpluses would go straight to transportation. And quite frankly, one of the governor's good amendments in the bill was that he increased that half of all future surpluses to 2/3 of all future surpluses. On the abusive driver fees, yeah, we should eat crow on that. I don't like them. I think it was messed up. The way we did those abusive driver fees are outrageous. If the option right now were to vote to repeal them or keep them the way they are, I would vote to repeal them. but they were part of a much larger bill. And quite frankly, as a policeman, I have seen what abusive drivers can do on our roads and the highway. I've seen young bodies in horrible wrecks twisted around steel and broken glass. So the concept of abuse, and I know this is politically unpopular, and I know I'll probably catch lots of heat and probably some more negative mail from my opponent for this statement, but I support the concept of abuser driving fees if we can get it right. We use traffic fines now to fund education. Why can't we use traffic fines to improve transportation? If we can include all drivers, and if we can also adjust the fines that were outrageous, I will agree. I'm a supporter of the concept of abusive driver fees. On the Northern Virginia regional government, I didn't really like that idea, and that's another part of the bill I don't like. I would still support that part of the bill if in the original bill, localities could opt out. If the city of Manassas said we don't want to be in it, they could opt out. That's the way I'd like to bring the bill back. Under the plan that when the governor amended it, it basically became if the majority of the Northern Virginia jurisdiction said they wanted to do it, the city of Manassas would have to do it, and I don't like that part of the bill either.
Same question, Ms. Rishell.
Well, I want to go to Richmond to repeal these fees. Yes, we all want to hold bad drivers accountable, but this is not the way to do it. Out-of-state folks are not held accountable. You know, there's no mechanism to collect from them. The mechanism is through the DMV, and that's why only Virginians have to pay these fees. And you know something's wrong when there's a pregnant woman, thinks she's in labor, she's rushing to the hospital, she gets hit with these fines. But you know, the larger problem here's how we got into this. The transportation bill was 105 pages long. The Republican caucus sprung this on the legislature 24 hours before the session ended in a last-ditch effort to make it appear that they solved the transportation problem. My opponent voted for these abuser fees twice, and he was part of the majority caucus. He knew what was in there. I'm telling you tonight, I'm going to Richmond and I'm going to fix these abuser fees.
1 minute response.
Well, Jeanette is right. I agree. We have to get rid of the abuser fees the way they're written now. But like I said before, even the governor, both the governor and the Speaker of the House says that this can be fixed, and abuser fees can be done just like we do traffic tickets now. If I write a person a ticket from Maryland, when I'm at work in Prince William County, he pays a fine. If he doesn't, Maryland will suspend his driver's license. We have a compact agreement with almost every state in the union. If we can find a way to have our fines go towards transportation infrastructure, as they currently now go, any traffic fine, that Maryland driver who I give a ticket now, if he gets a ticket, that fine goes to educational construction. We have to find a way that we can also apply for the worst of the worst drivers to have some of that fine go towards transportation infrastructure. After all, it's bad accidents, really bad accidents, that cause some of our worst congestion days. The other morning, there were several accidents on 66. Route 28 was stopped. You couldn't move on Route 28. It's bad, abusive drivers that quite often cause this congestion.
1 minute response, Ms. Rishell. Okay. The next question will go first to Ms. Rishell. If elected, would you support legislation to add sexual orientation to the Commonwealth's workplace non-discrimination laws for state employees?
Well, I think if it's good enough for Senator Allen, it should be good enough for the entire Commonwealth. And that was his policy. But the larger issue here is that we are focused on social policies to the point where we are ignoring the bread and butter issues of this Commonwealth. We're focusing on social legislation to the point where, are we addressing drug abuse? Are we addressing alcohol abuse? How can we keep families together? How can we solve transportation? How can we fully fund education? How can we ensure that public safety is fully funded? And how can we ensure the quality of life for first responders? These are the bread and butter issues. I'm not going to Richmond to do social legislation. I'm going there to work on the meat and potato issues of this Commonwealth.
2 minutes, Delegate Miller. Do you want to repeat?
Sure.
Okay. If elected, would you support legislation to add sexual orientation to Virginia's workplace non-discrimination laws for state employees?
No, I would not.
What, any rebuttal or any response? Okay. All right, so the next question goes first to Delegate Miller. What is your position on mandatory pre-K public education? If you support it, how would you fund it?
Well, we heard a question in the earlier debate about how strapped our public schools are going to be with this downturn in the economy. And it's a perfect example of why I know I do not support the governor's pre-K initiative. I understand why he wants to do it, and I think he has some very good points in why he wants to do it. I simply don't think we have the money to do it. We are already having a difficult enough time funding education on the K through 12 level. To add an entire new grade to our school system would not only put a burden on the state government, it would put an incredibly financial problem on our local governments that already have trailers for classrooms. So no, I do not support the governor's plan. I do not want to criticize him too harshly for the plan because I understand why he wants it. But I simply don't think we have the money there. Thank you.
Ms. Rishell, same question, 2 minutes.
Well, I have 3 precious little granddaughters, and they give me an immediate and a personal interest in education. And incidentally, I have Virginia Education Association endorsement, and I will uphold that endorsement to the best of my ability. I've always been a strong supporter of education because it's the strongest engine for upward mobility in this nation, and it always has been. I think we need to have smaller class sizes and competitive teachers' pay, but yes, I do support Governor Kane's preschool, voluntary preschool program for children under 5. And I say this, it's a goal. See, what governing is all about is setting goals. This is a fabulous long-term goal. We may not be able to afford to do what we want to do with it right now, but on down the line we will. We need to begin right now with at-risk children. Because I'll tell you, you can fund it now, you can pay today, or you can pay tomorrow in the form of increased social services, increased prisons. You're going to have to build more prisons, or you're going to have more criminals on the streets. Because success in later life is tied directly to education in early life. And most of a child's brain is formed before the age of 5. So this is extremely important. This goes to the foundations of our society and our success in the future.
Response? 1 minute.
Again, it goes to the cost of government. Jeanette just finished saying that she wants to increase teachers' pay. She wants to keep the classroom sizes even smaller, and I agree with those. And that's going to be expensive enough. Then to add an entire new grade to our school system. And let me ask this, when does it stop after that? Do we have pre-pre-K? Should we add a 14th grade rather than just a 13th grade, since most of the child's development does happen before the age of 5? And quite simply, most of the really at-risk kids now are in Head Start and are getting those needs that they need to have. So ladies and gentlemen, it comes down to a cost of government. Simply put, money doesn't grow on trees. We have to be very careful for the dollars that we take from you as citizens and from the businesses of this Commonwealth, and we have to spend them wisely. That money would be better spent on improving the teachers' pay and keeping the classroom sizes lower, not adding a new grade to our school system.
1 minute, Ms. Rishell.
Well, governing is about legislating not just for today. It's about legislating for years from now. It's about the future. We know that we can't do everything, and that's why I talk about long-term goals and short-term goals. But I'll tell you, good government is about setting these goals, it's about prioritizing, and it's about funding accordingly. We know we can't do everything, but we'll do what we can.
Okay, the next question goes first to Ms. Rishell. Would you support the overturning of Roe versus Wade, even in the case of rape, incest, or a woman's right to choose to terminate her pregnancy for health reasons?
This issue is a basic and fundamental issue of reproductive rights. You know, I, like everybody in this room probably, is pro-prevention. Our emphasis needs to be on reducing the number of unwanted pregnancies if we're really serious about this type of an issue. You know, we need to teach abstinence to our children. We need to educate them. We need for parents to step up and be parents. They need to provide moral guidance for their children. Believe me, as a mother and a grandmother, I understand the importance of parenting. But you know, passing laws that will restrict reproductive freedom is not going to reduce the number of unwanted pregnancies. And I'm going to speak from the heart on this right now. I'll tell you, for me, abortion is like going to war. Just as nations must reserve the right to go to war when all statecraft and diplomacy fails, therefore, this option must be available to women. That's truly how I feel about it.
2 minutes, Delegate Miller.
If I'm not mistaken, I think I just heard Ms. Rishell say she wanted to keep her options open to declare war on an innocent human baby, but I'm not sure if that's the case. To answer your question, sir, I'm not on the Supreme Court, so I will not ever have, and I never will be on the Supreme Court, so I'll never have the opportunity to overturn Roe versus Wade. But if the federal Supreme Court does decide to overturn Roe v. Wade, yes, I will support to end abortions in the Commonwealth of Virginia in all cases, with the exception of the risk of the life to the mother. I believe in human life. I believe in innocent human life, and I think that one of the fundamental duties of government is to protect that life, and I'm very proud to stand on that issue.
Can you respond, Ms. Rishell? 1 minute.
I'm a mother and a grandmother, and believe me, I know the value of life. And in no way did I intend to declare war on unborn babies. That's a ridiculous comparison. I was trying to compare the gravity of the decision. That's what I was trying to compare.
Any response? Okay. Okay, the next question goes first to Mr. Miller. Is there any specific legislation that you're planning on sponsoring or co-sponsoring when you go to Richmond?
Yes, quite a bit. Absolutely. Obviously, there are several bills related to immigration that I fully intend to sponsor. There's several bills that I did not get through the Senate that I would like to bring back, including one of the most important bills. In fact, quite frankly, I think it was the most important bill that I submitted in Richmond this past year, which didn't have to do with illegal immigration. It had to do with criminal justice, and that's the misdemeanor arrest bill. I'd like to bring that bill back, possibly modified a little bit, so the state Senate, Senator Stolley's committee may let it out of committee, because I do believe if it does get out of committee, it will become law. It allows local law enforcement to take into custody any Class 1 or Class 2 misdemeanor that is committed in their presence. Currently, under recent Virginia Supreme Court rulings, we as police officers, myself and my fellow police officers, must release anyone who commits a Class 1 or 2 misdemeanor in front of us. If that person, well, there's some exceptions, but basically if that person agrees to stop the act and you can see that and promises to come to court, we must release them on a summons. And let me give you an example of how I think that's a horrible idea. If I'm patrolling one night here in Prince William County and I catch a peeping Tom looking in someone's window, the husband's off at work at the night shift and the wife's just getting out of the shower, I catch a peeping Tom looking in her window. That's a Class 1 misdemeanor. I get him, I tackle him, I handcuff him. Yet I find good ID on him, and he tells me, officer, I promise you I will not do this act again, and I promise you I'll come to court. I have to release him on a summons right there. I no longer have the discretion after Moore versus the Commonwealth decision, which was done late last year, to take him into custody. The vast majority of the states in our union have that legislation and allow local law enforcement to take people like that into custody. And there's a perfect example of how I will stand up to special interests who often support me. The biggest opponent of that group was that bill that I had was a Second Amendment rights group that strongly supported me in my campaign last year. But when I brought that bill forward, they were strongly opposed to it and said, we supported you, Jackson, you better yank that bill. I told them I would not yank it and I would push for it as hard as I could. I appreciate their support. I hope I can get their support again, but I will not yank that bill because it's what's right for the Commonwealth. But that is specifically one of the most important bills that I do want to bring back.
Okay, 2 minutes, Ms. Rishell. Any specific legislation that you plan to introduce or co-sponsor if you're elected to the House of Delegates?
Yes, there would be illegal immigration legislation that I would propose. We need to give businesses the tools and the protocols in order to check the workers that they're hiring. That's one of the first things I would do. Also, I would request law enforcement funding, try to bring that back to the locality because we have gang activity all across the region, and I'm a strong supporter of Frank Wolf's three-part gang prevention program: prevention, intervention, and enforcement. And we're going to need funding, additional funding for that. I also think that we need a task force because there's 1,000 or more child sexual predators missing from the Virginia registry. I'd like to form a task force to track them down and to find out how they went missing. Also, I think we need to give law enforcement tools to do their job. And as an example, I would like to I propose that on everyone's driver's license who is a repeat sex offender, we have the letters RSO clearly printed on all Virginia driver's license. When a repeat sex offender is stopped at a traffic stop, the law enforcement officer will see that on the driver's license, and it's a tool. If the person has children in the car, then I would hope that the officer would begin questioning the person as to why those children are in the car. I'm a security mom and I'm a security grandma.
Any response? Anything else? Okay. All right, we're at the point now where the candidates ask each other a question. So Mr. Miller, Delegate Miller, you have 1 minute to ask a question of Ms. Rishell, and she has 3 minutes to respond to that question.
Ms. Rishell, both of us have interviewed with many organizations and activists and groups, and trade groups, professional groups. You've indicated to many of them that you would have supported House Bill 3202. And simple question, I don't think it should take 3 minutes, but in the governor's amended version, would you have voted with the majority of House, would you have voted yes or no with the majority of the House of Delegates in House Bill 3202?
Make sure that I would like to think that I would have had the time to read 105 pages. But you know, I'm not going to second guess myself. Jackson's a member of the majority party. It was his caucus that released that bill only 24 hours before the session ended. So as to whether I would have had time to go through 105 pages, I don't know. I like to think that I would have found the flaws and voted against it.
Now, Ms. Rishell, 1 minute to ask a question of Mr. Miller, and Delegate Miller has 3 minutes to respond.
As a delegate, you placed 6 funding requests, 6 specific funding requests. If you're so serious about ICE training and about counteracting gang activity, then why did none of these requests involve bringing back additional law enforcement funding to the localities? Why didn't you try?
I'd actually spoken with Senator Colgan about this. I was thinking, for one, Senator Colgan's request would get through and I would represent that in the House, but that didn't happen. On the other hand, at the time, I also thought exactly what would have happened. The city of Manassas and Prince William County, on my initiative, on my persistence from the city of Manassas, moved forward with ICE training, something you were opposed to with our local law enforcement. What ended up happening is if we asked for that request, I knew agencies from all over the state would ask for the request, and the money would get dropped. That's exactly what happened. My worry there was that if we gave too many promises to the localities that we would be able to fund it, that the city of Manassas, Prince William County, Manassas Park's governing bodies may come back and say, well, if the state can't fund it, we're not going to do it. So I wanted to make sure that we made sure it happened, whether it be on local dollars, and once the local dollars approve it, then I will certainly support it, and I will certainly push for it in the future.
And now it's time for the closing statements. We will hear first from Ms. Rishell for 3 minutes.
It's time for a change in Richmond. What you've seen tonight is a clear-cut difference between my opponent and I. I'm offering you a representative in Richmond who will not allow ideology and self-interest to dictate policies that should only be decided with the best interests of citizens in mind. I will hold employers accountable who knowingly hire illegal immigrants so we can break the revolving door of illegal immigration by removing the incentives that bring the workers here, and the incentive is the jobs. I will go to Richmond to fix the abusive driver fees that my opponent voted for twice. We all want to hold bad drivers accountable, but this is not the way. I will support education by reducing class sizes and helping to keep teachers' salaries competitive. I will strengthen public safety and also uphold the quality of life for first responders. I will support initiatives that consider transportation when land use decisions are made. It's time to send a message to Richmond to stop the talk and get to work. I'm not tied to ideology, and I can provide serious and creative problem solving. I appreciate the Committee of 100, our moderator Keith Scarborough, and to everyone who gave up their evening to be here tonight. Thank you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, the 50th House District does have 2 clear choices. On one hand, you have Jackson Miller. On the other hand, you have the anti-Jackson Miller. With Jackson Miller, you know where he stands. There is no confusion. Agree or disagree, you know where he is on the issues. With Jeanette Rishell, the electorate has nothing but confusion. Depending on what door she knocks on is which Jeanette Rishell you'll get. I've heard from dozens of people across this district. She tells some people that she's the candidate that's going to get tough on illegal immigration, that that other Miller guy is just pretending about it. When she talks to other doors, she tells them that I'm the kinder, gentler candidate that's going to help protect illegal aliens. To keep her fallacies safe, she doesn't even mention immigration, the most hottest debated issue in this district, on her campaign literature. She doesn't even mention it. By not mentioning it, that way she can tell people what they want to hear without them finding out the truth. Jeanette loves to say that I'm an extremist and that she's the one who can reach out across the aisle to get things done. Nothing could be further from the truth, and facts and history prove it. Let me give you a couple of examples. It started with last year's campaign and continued tonight. She goes on to praise Harry Parrish, which I do too. What she fails to tell you is that while I was working to get Harry Parrish elected, she was contributing money and campaigning for Harry Parrish's opponent. Another example is two of my most important and controversial bills, House Bill 2937, which she did call me an extremist for, and House Bill 2943. These bills, I had to reach out across the aisle to get Democrat support and got at least 70 votes, bipartisan votes, to get that support from the Democrats in the House of Delegates. What do we get from Jeanette? Quotes like this in the Gainesville Times. The Republican-led House is the most incompetent, politicized, arrogant, and ineffective that the House has ever had. That's really reaching out to the other side, with a fist maybe. Ladies and gentlemen, you don't have quotes like that from me about the Democratic caucus, because I want to work with that caucus. Simply put, she is the pure partisan in this race. Finally, it comes down to integrity, ladies and gentlemen. We all know about her lies in her first 3 pieces of mail she sent out. Both of the local newspapers have established those lies and proved her falsehoods quite clearly. Yet she continues to send out mail with lies that are easily proven and wrong. It amazes me. In this most recent mail piece, she puts in here that Jackson Miller proposed nothing to hold VDOT accountable for how it spends taxpayer dollars. Another outright lie, ladies and gentlemen. A simple check of the bills that I submitted in the House of Delegates this year would show that House Bill 2941 and House Bill 2944 are in direct contradiction to this lie. With Jeanette Rishell, you have one of 2 things. You have somebody that can't comprehend the government budget or can't read the bill, or a liar. Which 2 is it, ladies and gentlemen? I think the 50th House District deserves better. Ms. Rishell has sent 6 pieces of mail out so far this year. She has not mentioned her name once in any of those pieces, except for the little piece in the bottom that said approved by Jeanette Rishell. All it's been about is Jackson Miller. I've sent 6 out as well. The first 3 were about me and me only. They didn't mention Ms. Rishell. The next 3 included things that 1, that I did stand for, and 2, that Ms. Rishell stands for as well. And I sourced the things that I said about Ms. Rishell. Thank you.